You know, you can't go to Harvard, get a degree in acting and make it. It doesn't work like that. You have to really love it, or else why in God's name would you do it? I had a pretty dark past when it came to drugs and alcohol, and it wasn't until I had that near fatal incidents that I wanted to be clean. And I thought, gosh, surely there is a way for consumers of beauty and providers of beauty to come together in an equally advantageous format. I trust my team, I have a great team, but it's my baby. And I want to make sure that everything's running the way I want it to run, for better or for worse. I want to do what's best for the business, and my ego is not that big.
Cara Santana is a very impressive young woman. Not only is she a Hollywood actress and stars in the television series Salem, but she also decided to be the CEO of the Glam App. And this is no small endeavor. This app is now in 25 cities, including now London, and she runs this company with a vengeance. She is a very impressive and dedicated woman CEO, and she talks about what it's like to make it in Hollywood, which I think is probably some of the best preparation that an entrepreneur could ever have, because it's all about rejection. It's all about trying to get a voice in a sea of voices. And she cites perseverance as her best quality. She moved from Texas to California when she was 17 years old to try to make it in Hollywood, and picked up some substance abuse addictions in the meantime. She almost overdosed at 18 and had a real opening up of her mind, and I think it really cleared her up to be successful as an actress and now as a CEO. And it was really fascinating sitting down and talking with her, and so many lessons to learn from her. We love to profile strong females here on London Real, and Cara is no exception. And I learned a lot just being around her, and she has that energy of no excuses, get it done, and make it happen. And I believe she's going to be successful in her Hollywood career and also with her app. And I can't wait to see what she's going to do in the future. A lot of people ask me, what is London Real really about? Well, you know, we love making amazing inspirational videos, but it's much more than that. We actually have an academy of 1,000 members worldwide that meet together in global cities, including London, at our summit meetings, and we push each other. We try to get the best version of ourselves, because I believe we owe that to the world, to be the best, to stop playing small, to go for it and just effing do it. And that's what we promote over on the Academy, and here's a little bit more about it.
The entrepreneurial journey, it can be a lonely road. I push myself in so many areas, but you know, you can't do it all yourself.
The thing about the Academy is, it's like, look, you have the ideas, you have the ability, you have the skill, and you have the sort of ambition for yourself. But when you have a group of people pulling you forward, it's so important.
Accountability is what's missing from most of the programs or any gurus or any internet mentor that I had before.
I wanted to get some accountability. I wanted to make myself accountable to a group, to you.
The reason we started the Academy is because I felt like we were doing these amazing talks. Like, we'd have a Peter Sage episode or a Dan Pena episode or a Kala or someone, and you get super inspired, and then YouTube stops, and then you go back to your life and you don't make any changes. And it was just like, what? It felt like, what are we doing? If you're designing your life right, the good times are now. And in a few years, you'll look back and say, wow, that was amazing.
The thing about the Academy is it has so many different sort of layers to it. I think your web seminars are awesome. The way you broke it down and the style of your teaching is pretty awesome.
I like the feed. when I have to motivate myself, I kind of look at others struggling and getting over those struggles. So I actually follow daily the feed.
Best feature would be the sort of Facebook aspect of it, the social media aspect of it, as in creating a profile with your goals, your dreams.
Everyone's on the same vibe, and we may be at different stages in our journeys, but everyone's on the same page at the end of the day. Everyone's really trying to push themselves and building the best you. It really resonates with me.
And the fact that I'm committing a small amount of money and the fact that I'm actually trying to interact with those people means that I'm invested and means that I will keep it for the long run.
You have to be serious about yourself and what you want to achieve. And if you're serious about yourself, this is going to be such a fantastic platform.
London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Cara Santana, a Hollywood actress, fashion writer, and creator of the Glam App, described as Uber for hair, nails, and makeup. In Hollywood, you're currently starring in the Massachusetts witch trial series Salem. In 2015, you created the Glam App, which delivers bespoke beauty experts to users on demand. London is now the 25th location for the app and your first international market. In 2014, your interest in politics took you to Botswana as an ambassador for UNICEF. Cara, welcome to London Real.
That was quite the introduction.
Right? I mean, it's tricky because you get interviewed by people in Hollywood and you do a lot of great press. So, I never know if I'm going to be as good as those intros.
That was the best intro I've ever had.
I think I should just specialize in just doing that.
Yeah. No, can you come around with me and introduce me?
Right? Or just the intro app. Maybe I could just do that. I really want to hear about you as a business person, and I've got a lot of questions about what it's like to work in Hollywood and make it in that business. We're far removed from that, even though we have our own little media mini empire here. But first, I wanted to know, what does London feel like? When you land on that plane, flying, 10 hours or 12 hours from LA, and you get here, and when you think, I'm going to London, what are some of the first things that come to your brain?
I love London. My boyfriend and I have been coming here, multiple times a year for probably about the last 5 years. We have a great friend base. The thing I love about London is it's culturally diverse. There's such a beautiful historic feel, but it's also very modern and cosmopolitan. And I love that about London. It really is the best of both worlds merging in one beautiful location.
Fashion, you know fashion well. You blog about fashion. The Glam App isn't specifically about fashion, but of course it's about looks. Mm-hmm. What does it feel like when you kind of walk around London? Not just in the runway shows, I'm sure you've been to, but just when you see the way women dress or men dress, how does it feel? Well,
London's had a very long history with fashion, from the punk days to the 60s mod to sort of the East London street style. It's very eclectic, very diverse. I love it. You can't really go wrong here. There's just so many sort of interesting stylistic and aesthetic looks that I like to play with, whether it's, dressing sort of quintessentially proper, as you would expect sort of the royals to, or if you're in East London and you're enjoying the street style or that vintage sort of flavor that it has. It's a really interesting and creative way to sort of explore your look and your personal style.
And how would you say it differs from, say, Paris, Milan, as we kind of get into the continent?
Yeah, I would say sort of there's such a distinct sort of English feel. whereas I think, Paris and Milan, every city really has its unique sort of aesthetic. And what I love about London, as it is so culturally diverse, you see a lot of sort of distinct styles sort of merging together. I think that's what really separates it. Parisian chic is sort of one thing, and sort of when I think about the Milanese, I think of the bright and the bold and the Italian flavor. And I think London is just sort of its own melting pot of street style and punk mixed with mod and sort of that classic sort of proper taste, which I think is indicative of the city.
Good summary.
Thanks.
London, it's been traditionally like a really big trade port, and so I think you're right. It's got so many different cultures that have moved through, whereas I think places like Paris and Milan, they've managed to kind of hold on to more of like their country's fashion identity, whereas here, you're right, everything kind of cruises through. But you have to remember, like in the 17th century, 18th century, like the new money in Britain would like wear suits and try to dress up kind of like what it used to be for royal and for moneyed people. And so the whole idea of a man wearing a suit here, I think kind of came about when they were trying to just get this dress on. And so for me, I'm from San Diego. Like I grew up wearing shorts like every day. And so for me, this city's changed me a little bit. In the last few years, I'm starting to put suits on and wearing them. And I'm like, okay, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's totally true. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so I'm definitely a SoCal kind of gal, and if you see me in Los Angeles, I'm probably wearing cutoffs and a t-shirt and heels. But when I travel, I certainly like to sort of assimilate organically into whatever the cultural, feel is. So whether it's New York or London, Paris, Milan, whatever that may be, I definitely like to absorb the taste and the culture, and the first way to do that is sort of through fashion and food. So
will you dress a little different when you go out in LA after you've made an international trip? And will your friends say, "What is that?"
No, I don't think so. Okay. I leave it where I'm at for sure.
Okay,
for sure.
I've been rocking the waistcoats lately, and
I like it. Very dapper. It's very English.
Yeah, it kind of works,
like it.
And it's I'm gonna go with it for now.
You should.
Yeah, thank you. I want to get into why you would jump in and be the CEO of a tech startup, because that's a whole nother, sometimes, recipe for hurt, because it's a very hard job, and I want to find out about that because I get to interview a lot of CEOs and founders of tech companies. But first, I just want to find out, for people that don't know, I mean, I've watched you in Salem, and I know you grew up in El Paso, Texas, and then moved to LA. And I remember you've talked about, hard work, and you were like, I knocked on every door until someone gave you a shout. It's all about perseverance. There's no gray story. You trained hard. You went after what you wanted. For people that don't know, what is it like to kind of make it in Hollywood, or to get on a series, or just to be in the acting business?
Yeah, it's a great question. You use the term making it, and I don't necessarily feel like I've quote unquote made it, which I think is a positive thing, and you never want to peak when you're 30. I think there's only one way to go, and that's down. So I hope I never sort of reach that peak, and I'm always sort of striving for more, but certainly the entertainment industry, similar to sort of any entrepreneurial endeavor in the tech industry and startups, there's a lot of rejection. I think there's probably more failure than there is success, not to sound bleak, but it's certainly a competitive environment. It's very subjective, it's not linear. If you think, my mom's a lawyer, you go to school, you take the LSAT after you get your bachelor's, then you get a law degree, and then you go to a firm and you start working, and it's very linear. Acting's not like that. There's no sort of test that you take. There's no sort of pathway to getting the job. It's sort of all a very much of a subjective thing, and I think that can be, for the wrong person, incredibly arduous and cumbersome, and I think for the right person, it's fun and exciting and interesting, and you never know where life's going to take you. It takes a certain, I think, personality. And I love the arts. I love creating, and I think it was a very natural career path. I always knew I wanted to be an actress. I love the idea of stepping outside of myself and inventing another person's world and really creating someone from the ground up. I love writing, and I love reading, and so it was a very natural progression, but it's certainly not an easy field to be in, and it takes a certain type of person, I think, to to really persevere through it.
So it toughens you up. It makes startups look easy, maybe.
You know, no, startups are hard. And I think if I had any idea of what I was getting into, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
It was sort
Same
of.
with acting, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's sort of a level of naivete that works in your favor because you don't really know what you're getting into. When I was 5 years old and I knew I wanted to be an actress, and I sort of knew that only because I loved playing make-believe in my house, and then my parents put me into a theater camp, and I loved the idea of finding a person and making that person my own. And through that, I realized, I wanted to be an actress. And this was, in the 1990s, so it wasn't like fame and celebrity and the exposure that now we relate to, acting in the acting world. It wasn't something that I was conscious of. It really was a love of creativity and a love of self-expression that really drove me to taking that path. Had I been aware of all of it, maybe I would have taken a path that was easier, but for better or for worse, I didn't.
But like you said, it's very competitive, and so it just toughens you up to where you have to deal with rejection, and just, I guess you have to really love it to kind of keep coming back and keep coming back.
And that's the thing, it's really about that art. It's really about that creativity. It's really about that outlet that I think really separates sort of an artist from maybe, some of the other aspects of the entertainment industry. And so, I think you have to really love it, or else why in God's name would you do it? It's one of the hardest. It's not brain surgery, but it's hard. It's not an easy path for sure.
Because it's not obvious how to succeed, right? Like you said, there's no linear path.
And there's no rule book. I mean, look at society right now and the public figures for which we pay the most attention to. I mean, it's such a broad spectrum, and they've all had such different backgrounds, and none of them share a similarity other than the fact that they have created such a draw of attention to them. So there's no, you can't go to Harvard, get a degree in acting and make it. It doesn't work like that. So
we were talking earlier about the Steve Jobs commencement speech and how he said, there's a lot of the dots in life, and when looking back, then you can connect them.
Yeah, you can never connect the dots looking forward, but you always can looking back.
Right. If you look at some of those dots in your life, what were some of those? Was moving to LA one of those? Was it like the first movie role was one of those?
Well, it's kind of a dark dotted line, but I'm actually 10 years sober. And so when I was 18 years old, I had a pretty dark sort of past when it came to drugs and alcohol. And I think it was very painful for my parents not really understanding sort of what led me to that space and how I would get out of it. But looking back, I feel like it was really sort of the crux of my love of getting out of myself and finding another person, which took me to the path of being an actress. And so looking forward from that point of addiction and sobriety, no one knew where this was going to take me, but looking back, I say, oh wow, that really shaped the foundation of who I am in a very positive way. Would never have changed that, no matter how dark it was or how painful it was, and I'm a better person for it. And I think that's probably the biggest sort of cornerstone of my 30-year life that I would say informs sort of that quote for me and why I love it so much.
Yeah, that comes up a lot on this show, and I've talked about my own issues there kind of around when I was 30. And when I read about you kind of when you were 18, when you had that crisis, I was thinking like, good for her, she got that over with.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, now I can kind of focus on the rest of my life, because some people, me included, took me until like I was 30 to deal with that. And usually, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this, but usually when you have a kind of, near-death experience with substances, it's because you don't like the person you are, and you kind of want to get away from them. For me, it was, I think, all the pressures I put on myself. But I was curious, what was your perspective?
It's certainly escapism at its finest. I mean, you don't alter your sensibilities from the neck up, as we say, if you are really comfortable as who you are. So I think when I look back before my quote-unquote using began, as a child, I was always looking to escape, whether it was playing make-believe in my bedroom, whether it was theater class, acting school, at writing, whatever it was. And the older I got, the more powerful that substance needed to be, until I was really able to, in recovery, absorb sort of the feelings and emotions that I had. And I always like to say, I think there's sort of this stigma around addiction that is sort of stereotypical of what an addict or an alcoholic may or may not look like. So I always like to say, my parents have been married 38 years. I had a fabulous upbringing, a quintessential really, and I still suffered from this disease. And so it's not a result of childhood, it's not a result of nurture, it's just really, in my belief, a disease that I suffered from. And it wasn't until I was able to get into sobriety and deal with the sort of mental effects of that insecurity that I was able to be free of drugs and alcohol and live a sober lifestyle and absorb sort of the emotions that were compelling me to use.
And what did you learn about yourself, like in that period?
I learned, what did I learn? That's such a great question. So profound too. I really want to think about my answer. I think I learned that self-acceptance is the number one thing, that as humans, we're naturally insecure. I don't know a person on this planet that doesn't doubt themselves, question themselves, have fears, have insecurities about themselves, the choices that they're making, their career, finance, whatever it may be, and that I'm human just as everyone else is, and I have to be able to process those things, and it starts with me. I think we as a society tend to look outside of ourselves when there's a problem. What you did, what he did, what she did, the society did, the institution did, but really it's not ask what they can change, it's what you can change, off of John F. Kennedy's sort of play on his words. But it's really about sort of taking a look inside and internalizing those feelings instead of making it the responsibility of the people or the world around you. My mom always says, you can never control how a person is going to act, you can only control how you react. So that's something I think that I've learned to use when I come up with conflict or doubt or insecurity, because it does happen.
Yeah.
Life on life's terms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that accelerated, being like, were you in Hollywood at the time and, a teenager in Hollywood rolling with certain crews? Was it kind of accelerated to get to that point? And was maybe that a good thing?
I don't know. It's such a good question. I would never really blame it on one thing or not. I just think I always had that ism inside of me. And, I was 18. That's sort of the climax of it. And I was new to Los Angeles. And I certainly felt stress, and I certainly felt pressure, and I certainly wanted to escape. But fundamentally, it was always there. And so maybe it did expedite the process of both my using and then consequently my sobriety. Maybe it didn't. I don't really know the answer to that. I just know that I'm grateful for my sobriety, and I'm grateful that I got it when I did. But certainly there's no clear-cut path, and I know people of all ages who got sober at different times, but I believe you get sober when you need to be sober, when you're willing to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I just had Matt Willis in here, who's a kind of a rock star for the band Busted and McBusted, and he was telling me about his own issues, and he was like, but it took him years, and he was just like, Brian, I went to rehab, but I didn't really want to go, and then I didn't want to go, and then I didn't want to go, and finally there was a point where he was just like, my daughter and my wife, and I'm showing up here, and then finally he's like, I chose to stop.
And I think that's a similar sort of sentiment that you hear in recovery, and certainly was for me. I wasn't going to stop until I was ready to stop, and it wasn't until I had that near fatal incidents that I wanted to be clean. I did not want to live that life, didn't want to do that to myself or the people around me, and it scared me. It scared me straight. So certainly you have to be ready and willing to get there.
Did opportunities open up? Was life easier after that when you're not trying to fight against yourself? And did you see things just kind of happen?
I don't know if life is easier, because life is always challenging, and I've certainly had great success sober, and I've had failures, sober. But I think the thing that was really different was my ability to handle and process those successes and failures. And instead of it being an extreme high and a great low, everything is just sort of like, even. You know, you take the good with the bad, there's success, there's failure, there's duality in life, and I'm able to handle that in a much more almost sort of systematic way and process things that I think sort of the average person is able to do. And I think when you're suffering from any sort of mental illness, you have to find a sense of normalcy, because the way that your brain processes things is just inherently different than someone who doesn't suffer from mental illness.
What does it take to be a successful actress on a TV set like, you know, Salem, or on a movie set? Like, I'm sure you're surrounded by some people that are very good at what they do. You see people that are good at what they do. Is there like one or two or three things where you're like, you know, it really takes this more than, say, this?
I think a willingness to learn is number one. You know, acting is a collaborative art form, whether it's collaborating with the people you're working with, your actors, fellow actors, the director, a writer, costumes. I mean, production does not function with one person alone. And let me qualify this by saying I don't even consider myself as a successful quote unquote actor. I feel like I am at the bottom of the totem pole with so much to learn. And I sincerely hope I always feel that way. Because the minute that you think that you are greater than the project, or you are greater than the sum of the parts, is when you have, you know, shot yourself in the foot. So I think a willingness to learn and to stay open is the first thing. I think the second thing is extreme work ethic. I mean, 12-hour days, 14-hour days, sometimes in extreme heat, extreme cold, nights, days. I mean, you never know what your production is going to entail. And staying diligent and hungry and focused, I think, is the second key. And I think humility is the third, and staying humble and, you know, available to the people around you would be third. And fourth would be a tough skin, because it's not for the faint of heart.
How so? Like on the set, or with directors, or with fans and haters?
Well, no, let's talk about this role on Salem. I auditioned for the role. They wanted a Native American Indian. I'm not Native American. I fought for the role. I really wanted to play this character. I thought it was super cool. I auditioned for the role in English. I book it. I fly literally the next day to Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where we film, within 12 hours. I get there and they say, oh, by the way, we're changing the character from English speaking to Algonquian speaking, so we hope you can learn Algonquian. Algonquian? I mean, I've never, you know, I didn't even know what Algonquian was, let alone
what is it?
How to speak it. It's just a Native American language.
Okay.
And the Native American community is incredibly private and protective of their heritage, especially when it comes to cinema and how they've been portrayed in media. So there's not, like, you can't YouTube like how to speak in Algonquian and like put earphones on and learn it like you can with other languages. So we had to bring in a translator. You can't write phonetically Algonquian because it's all symbols. So you have to like translate it. It's incredibly difficult. So I had to learn Algonquian. My character's naked for the majority of the show, which consists of about 3 hours of red body paint a day with eyes drawn onto me, extensions in my hair. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So that is the thick skin. It's not like you show up, you get your hair and your makeup done, and life's just so easy. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into really bringing a genuine and authentic character to life, and a great responsibility that most actors feel when they are portraying a character, especially a character that has a history to it. And so you have to be thick-skinned and ready to put in the work. And I think if you think you're going to get to Los Angeles and become an actor or an actress without hard work, you're probably in for a rude awakening.
Most people have no idea how many hours, days, months it takes to produce 10 seconds on screen, right? They just see you in the big glamour opening shot, and you got the smoking things, and but they don't realize that at that day, a bunch of things went wrong. The weeks you took to learn the language, that take you probably weren't even happy with. You like the other take. Someone had just done this had just done this.
Are you an actor?
No.
You understand it so well.
I'm just guessing.
No, you totally understand it. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And did you learn more about, Native American culture in America? I've just seen The Revenant, which is kind of fascinating because, DiCaprio speaks in a native tongue. And there was a documentary done about it. And again, like you said, I believe the Native American population have really been probably exploited and portrayed wrong in Hollywood since the days of John Wayne Westerns. And even you could argue, Dances with Wolves was maybe wrong in some ways, although maybe it progressed in many ways. Did you find like a different connection? Did you learn things you didn't know before?
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely a greater appreciation for the culture in general. And I certainly saw, to say I saw a sense of humanity that I didn't see before would imply that I didn't see humanity in the Native American people before, but I certainly just wasn't aware of the extraordinary craftsmanship of these people and cultural advancements. And, we were talking about fashion earlier, and sort of, they were really the pioneers of fashion and creating clothing out of necessity and art out of necessity, and these languages that they created so that they could speak to one another. I mean, really, when you look at the history, it is so powerful and so extraordinary that only, my greatest respect to the Native American people.
Do you get hate for not being Native American? And
I've been really fortunate that that was certainly a concern. And it was certainly more a concern of the networks than it was of mine, because I'm an actor. So you give me a job and I'm gonna give you my 100% best effort at portraying that character in the most authentic and genuine form. But certainly, the network and the studio were concerned that would be a potential backlash. I was very fortunate that we didn't get that criticism. The person who played my father, Ralph Trujillo, is Native American, and his cousin's from the Algonquian Indian tribe. And so I think he brought a great gravitas to the role, and it was very well received, which I'm very happy about. And I was, a small cog in that. So I'm glad that we came out of it with positive feedback.
And will that series continue?
Yeah, we're shooting season 3 as we speak.
Okay, and you're down in Louisiana.
I actually haven't gone back yet, but I will be.
Okay, and then you get painted up for the day and you gotta be naked, which might sound cool, but it probably isn't cool after a while.
So it's the worst.
Sex scenes on camera aren't cool either.
The worst. I mean, Shane, who I play opposite of, I've been a friend of mine for years and knows my boyfriend really well. So at least there's a sense of like comfort and safety that's there. But they're terrible. I mean, they're just awful. It is literally the least favorite part of that, and the face paint, the body paint, but it's so awful. There's like 40 grown men like standing around watching you, pretend like you're having sex. It's so awkward.
That's hard work. What is your dream role as an actor? Is it kind of that really big movie where you have the key part? Is it something you write and produce? Or is it that series that, you can kind of make your own? I mean, I'm just curious, like for you, when you think like, in a couple years from now, this is what I'd like to do. Yeah. What is that?
Such a good question. I mean, I think it's ever evolving. Right now, it took me about 5 years, but I've written a movie based on my experience in addiction and sobriety. It's semi-autobiographical. It takes place in New York City in 3 decades, following 6 people's independent lives who's all kind of connect at the end. And it's based on my experience and experience of people that I've become sober with and experience of people that I know. And so right now, that's my dream role, is producing that and acting in it and seeing the full process, culminate in a feature film.
We've seen like with Angelina Jolie, she said that she almost kind of prefers being behind the camera now and being the director. And she's kind of like, the acting doesn't get her as excited as it used to be. Do you think that for that movie you're talking about, would you star in it or would you be behind the scenes?
I would star in it, but I wouldn't direct it. And I think, when you look at someone like, Angelina Jolie, in my humble opinion, I mean, we talked about peaking, and of course, I'm not surprised that someone with her career success feels like now the next logical progression to sort of strive and begin to learn and grow, as I was talking about my acting career, would be directing, because that's unfamiliar territory. And when you're a creative person, when you're an artistic person, you never want to stop learning. You never want to start creating. And she's had such incredible success. I mean, she has the highest honor that we give in our industry, an Academy Award. And so I'm not surprised that now she's taking a turn in the arts to sort of behind the camera and creating and helming productions. So I think that's great.
Tell me about Los Angeles. Explain this town to me. I'm from San Diego, but
Yeah.
when I go to LA, I never feel comfortable there. I just feel like I don't get what's going on. Last time I stayed at a hotel on Hollywood Boulevard, and even there it's magnified even more because it's a little crazy, but I always feel like there's this kind of a celebrity factor, and then people that aren't celebrities and aren't, and obviously it's a Hollywood town, and for me it makes me anxious.
Oh no.
But like, I know some people like it. What's your relationship like with LA? Do you understand how maybe I feel, or?
You know, no, it disappoints me that my town gives you that sentiment. I love Los Angeles, but I think I love Los Angeles because I have great friends. Some of them are in the entertainment industry, some of them are not. I have a great group of people around me. I have, hobbies and interests outside of entertainment. I have a life that is not sort of under the scope of the entertainment world. And I think if you sort of let that go, it's all make-believe anyway, it's a bunch of people pretending. If you let that go and you enjoy the beach and the mountains and the shopping and the culture and the museums and the art, you can sort of delineate the entertainment industry. It's such a small aspect of Hollywood. There's so much more to the city. And so I think if you let go of all that, you can have a better relationship with Los Angeles. I hope that for you. It's an incredible city.
Yeah, and if you're an actor, you have to be there. There's really no way around it.
I have friends who live in New York, or I have friends who live in London. I have friends who live, in the South that are actors and actresses. But I think if you want to start out and you really want to build a career, yeah, you need to be in the heart of it.
Right, and moving to LA was a quintessential step in your career. You had to go.
Well, I wanted to.
Okay.
I really wanted to. I mean, it was the town of, Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe and Sophia Loren and all of these iconic figures, and I loved their work, and I wanted to be there, and I made a PowerPoint presentation when I was 14 years old to convince my parents to let me go to boarding school for the performing arts outside of Los Angeles.
Do you still have that? You should post that.
I'm sure my mom does. And sure enough, they let me, and so I wanted to be there, and I think maybe that's why I have such a positive relationship with it. It was a desire. It wasn't forced.
And you went at 14?
I went at 16.
Okay.
15 turning 16.
You pitched him at 14, and then,
Yeah.
okay. And you went there. Did they move with you, or they?
No.
Okay.
Which is totally insane. And when I think about it now, if I had a 15-year-old daughter, there's no way that I would say, sure, go to Los Angeles. I don't know what my parents were thinking. And by the way, they're so conservative. If you were to ask them, they probably said they had a mental lapse and total judgment. But yeah. You
have a great relationship with your parents.
I do.
Your mom's here in London.
Yeah.
You're texting your dad today.
Yeah.
How important is that, for someone to have, either a young person or in general, just that really strong relationship with your parents?
I definitely wouldn't judge anybody else's experience, but it's incredibly important to me. My parents are role models to me. They're both very different. They've come from completely opposite backgrounds, and they've come together to form this union, and I'm so respectful of that and appreciative of the life that they gave me. My mom's a Russian Jew, my dad's an Italian Catholic. My father grew up with absolutely nothing. My mother grew up sort of with a lot, but my mother's father was an immigrant from Russia who, became the chief executive officer of Johnson Space Center, which is a part of NASA, and incredible work ethic. So having that familial connection to me is incredibly important, and they've been so supportive of me, and the fact that I sort of, we call it, took an alternative lifestyle. You know, my mom's a lawyer, my dad worked for the government, he's now retired, my brother's a real estate agent, my uncles and aunts are all attorneys, and I, you know, work in the arts. So I think, you know, that bond is just, it means everything to me, and I'm very grateful for it. But I don't think that, you know, if you don't have that relationship, that you're somehow less. It just works for me.
Yeah, I now have a good relationship with my father and mother, but I didn't always, but now I treasure it.
Yeah.
And as I get older and they get older, I just treasure that they're there, and like I can still call them and get advice. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a time machine when I can like FaceTime my dad in San Diego, and I can ask him questions, and I'm like, you know, in 10 years I might not be able to. So
yeah. I was FaceTiming my dad. My mom's out here with me in London, and my dad's back in New York, and we were like, oh, let's call dad. So we went to FaceTime, and of course he's, you know, almost 70, so he's like, doesn't answer the FaceTime, calls us from the landline, was like, my phone was doing the weirdest thing. I was like, we were trying to FaceTime him. He's like, what's that? Oh, goodness.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Generation, right?
Totally.
Let's talk about business. Now, you would have a very interesting story regardless of any apps in your life, but you chose last year to get an app in your life.
I did.
You know, I speak to entrepreneurs all the time, and it's a tough journey and a long road, and it's, I think actually your acting background probably helps you a lot in business, but I'm curious, what was the genesis of the idea for you, and then what made you actually do it? Because a lot of people have an idea for an app. You've probably heard this from thousands of people, and yet there's so much more to an app. I mean, you have people in locations all around the world, including London.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Glam App story.
So insane. Pure insanity is what drove me to create this app. No, I was doing press for Salem, the show that I'm on. And there was an event that was not covered by the publicity team of Salem. And when you go to an event, you, as an actress, you hire a stylist and you hire a glam team, which consists of hair, makeup, and nails. And typically, the production or the network or the studio pays for this as a part of the package for promoting the project. And this particular event was not on the approved list, and they weren't going to cover the glam. And these fees are incredibly expensive, starting at like $1,500. It's not cheap.
Wow, just to get you set up for that event.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's not.
$1,500. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not cheap.
This is good. I'm learning.
Yes. And I was like, well, shoot, what are my options? You know, pay out of pocket, which I'm an actress. You know, I'm a struggling actress. You know, I got a mortgage to pay. I can't just be, you know, frivolously spending $1,500. I can go to a makeup counter, which isn't chic, or I can do it myself, which is not going to turn out good. I'm not a hair and makeup artist. And I started thinking about sort of the everyday woman and what that experience must be like for them. And I thought, gosh, surely there is a way for consumers of beauty and providers of beauty to come together in an equally advantageous format to have services. And I started thinking about the Uber model, which has been so successful, giving, you know, the everyday person this luxurious way to travel, sort of that has usually been reserved for the rich or the famous or the elite, the royals. And I thought, there's a way to do this, and I'm going to do it. And then it was sheer insanity after that. And I called up my friend Joey Maloof, who does my hair and makeup a lot. And I said, in order to make this work, I need to legitimize it by bringing on someone who really understands the beauty market and what it is to be a freelance hair, makeup, or nail stylist. Will you come on board, be the creative director, have the creative vision of this, and really work with me with the stylists in mind as I work from a consumer perspective to build out this app? And he said, sure, it sounds like a great idea. We found a great company out of Boston called Infantry to help design and, you know, build the app, which took us several months. And I think I had the idea in October. And in February, we launched Los Angeles.
That's a year ago.
Yeah, we're a year old.
Okay. Did you have financing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
we have financing.
Like angel financing? Okay. And that was LA in February. How did that go, and where has that gone since?
So again, sheer insanity, I decided that I wanted to sort of take the Jeff Bezos approach, which was sort of scalability and create sort of a brand and name that was reliable, but also scalable, and that you knew whether you were in Los Angeles or New York, Miami, London, Dallas, Phoenix. I wanted to brand the name so that we could really solidify ourselves as the #1 beauty app, because I knew that the culture right now of these on-demand apps, whether it's food delivery, travel, convenience is really on.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media login and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there. That's big expansion.
It was very aggressive. Very aggressive.
Is that your style?